Imagine standing at the crossroads of rock history with two of the world's biggest bands vying for your voice, your presence, and your raw talent. Most people would leap at the chance. Yet one man, a singer called Terry Reid, nicknamed Super Lungs, walked away not once, but twice. He turned down Led Zeppelin before they were even called Led Zeppelin, and later waved off Deep Purple just as they were poised to reshape the sound of British rock. Today, few casual music fans know his name, yet Terry Reid profoundly altered the course of rock. Without him, Led Zeppelin might never have discovered Robert Plant. Without his refusal, Deep Purple might have ended up with a different frontman altogether. Did he make history's biggest mistake, or did he play a secret role in shaping rock as we know it? Let's dive into his story, starting with a young musician who earned the respect of legends like Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones, and Jimmy Page, only to become the ultimate what-if of rock and roll. Early years and the rise of Super Lungs. Terry Reid was born in Huntingdon, England in 1949. From a young age, music flowed through his life like an unstoppable current. By his early teens, he was already performing around local clubs and venues, wowing crowds with a voice that was shockingly powerful for someone so young. Older musicians were often taken aback by his raw range and emotional delivery. That's how he earned the nickname Super Lungs. It was obvious he had a gift, but it wasn't just raw volume. Reid's tone was distinctive, marked by an almost soulful grit that could switch from smooth ballads to full-throated rock screams in a heartbeat. As the 1960s British music scene began evolving, from Beatlemania to heavy blues rock, Reid found himself right at the heart of a cultural shift. Talent scouts, producers, and other musicians took notice. His big break came when he caught the attention of producer Mickie Most. Although Most was best known for working with acts like The Animals and Herman's Hermits, he saw massive potential in the teenage Reid. Before long, Terry Reid was opening for acts like Cream and Fleetwood Mac, honing his ability to captivate large audiences. If you saw him on stage back then, you might have guessed he was headed for rock superstardom. Yet Reid's destiny took an unexpected turn. People started calling him the next big thing, a phrase that can be both a blessing and a curse in the music industry. While he was definitely on the rise, he soon encountered an offer that could have catapulted him to legendary status, or consumed him entirely. Little did he know, another rising star named Jimmy Page was about to call with a life-changing proposition. Jimmy Page's vision, the new band that became Zeppelin. It was 1968. The Yardbirds, a legendary group that had once featured Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck, were on their last legs. Jimmy Page, then their lead guitarist, was eager to form a new outfit, one that delved even deeper into heavy blues riffs and thunderous rhythms. He knew he wanted John Paul Jones on bass and keyboards. He also knew they'd need a drummer who could match a new brand of powerful, aggressive sound. But first, Page had to find the right lead singer, someone whose voice could shred through the noise and carry this yet-to-be-named band to new heights. Word spread in the London music scene that Page was auditioning vocalists. Names were tossed around, but one kept surfacing: Terry Reid. Producers, fellow musicians, and even music journalists whispered that if anyone had the pipes to front a bold new project, it was Terry Reid. At the time, Reid was in his late teens, and his schedule was already packed. He'd been opening for high-profile acts and had a tour lined up. Yet the call came. Jimmy Page was determined to recruit him. Page had seen Reid perform, heard recordings, and recognized something special. The question wasn't if Terry Reid was good enough. It was whether or not he'd say yes. When Reid was approached, the opportunity seemed colossal. Even back then, Jimmy Page was considered a top-tier guitarist. John Paul Jones was a respected session musician, known for his adaptability and skill. The combination hinted at something epic waiting to happen. But there was a catch. Reid had contractual obligations to open for the Rolling Stones on tour. He couldn't just ditch those commitments overnight. The moment of truth arrived. Would Reid break his contract to seize the chance of a lifetime, or stay loyal to his existing engagements? The moment. He said no to Led Zeppelin. Saying no to a typical gig is one thing. Saying no to a band that would later become Led Zeppelin is legendary. Though in 1968, nobody yet knew how big this new group would become. Terry Reid had a decision that would haunt him, define him, and ultimately rewrite rock history. Reid was a man of his word, bound by a touring contract that would take him across the United States with the Rolling Stones. His sense of responsibility clashed with the allure of Page's invitation. After some thought, he politely declined. He just couldn't bail on the Stones' tour at the last minute, especially when so many people were counting on him. From Reed's perspective, he was acting ethically and maintaining professional integrity, qualities that, at the time, seemed essential. Yet, Reed didn't simply walk away. He made a recommendation that changed everything. He told Page, "Check out this kid from the Midlands, Robert Plant. And if you take him, don't forget his drummer, John Bonham." Plant and Bonham had been in a group called Band of Joy, and though they were raw, they had that spark Page was seeking. The rest is rock history. Page recruited Plant. Plant insisted on Bonham, and along with John Paul Jones, the lineup was set. The band briefly toured as the New Yardbirds, then rebranded as Led Zeppelin, and soared to unimaginable heights. But turning down Led Zeppelin was just the start of Reed's pattern of near-mythical refusals. Soon, another legendary group knocked on his door with a proposition that might have altered his career for good. Rising tension. Did Terry Reed regret it? News of this new supergroup's formation spread quickly in the music community. Critics, fans, and fellow musicians began to notice the sheer power of Led Zeppelin's live performances, the innovative style of Page's guitar work, and Robert Plant's earth-shattering vocals. Their debut album hit record stores in early 1969, packed with a raw intensity that was hard to ignore. People who knew Reed often asked him, "Are you kicking yourself for missing out?" In interviews, Terry Reed famously said he didn't regret his choice, at least not entirely. He had obligations, and as a professional, he wouldn't break a contract. Still, the enormity of Led Zeppelin's stardom was impossible to ignore. Within a year or two, they were headlining massive venues, outselling established acts, and shifting the entire landscape of rock. Reed, on the other hand, remained a respected but relatively niche figure, still recognized by insiders, yet never exploding into the mainstream. Rumors started swirling. Did Terry Reed secretly hate that he'd missed the chance? Did it keep him awake at night? He repeatedly insisted that everything turned out the way it was meant to. In many ways, he was right. Zeppelin's grueling tour schedule, heavy partying, and explosive lifestyle might not have been the best fit for his laid-back personality. Still, whenever the topic surfaced, fans couldn't help but wonder, what if? As if turning down Led Zeppelin wasn't enough, Reed soon found himself at another career crossroad. A second major band, itching for a new frontman, came knocking. Another offer, Deep Purple, enters the picture. In the late 1960s, Deep Purple was also on the rise, merging hard rock with classical influences and keyboards in a way that was both innovative and commercially viable. By 1969, they needed a frontman with a dynamic range, someone who could belt out aggressive rock anthems and still handle more melodic passages. Naturally, Terry Reed came up in conversations. Though Deep Purple hadn't yet hit the heights of their later success, particularly the iconic Smoke on the Water era, they were a formidable presence. They'd go on to become part of rock's unholy trinity alongside Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath in the early 1970s. Having Terry Reed's voice at the helm might have shaped their sound very differently. But Reed, true to form, said no. The details behind that refusal are less publicized than his Led Zeppelin story, but the essence remains the same. By then, Reed had his own path and wasn't convinced Deep Purple's direction aligned with his ambitions. Instead, Deep Purple ended up recruiting Ian Gillan, another powerhouse vocalist who contributed to the band's breakthrough success. This second refusal solidified Reed's legendary status as the guy who turned down not one but two future behemoths of the rock world. Some people started to joke that if the Rolling Stones or the Beatles had asked him to join, he probably would have turned them down too. So, how could a singer so lauded by peers remain relatively obscure, despite such iconic near misses? Part of the answer lies in the very qualities that made him so intriguing in the first place. The mythos of super lungs. If you're wondering why top-tier bands chase Terry Reed so eagerly, just listen to Aretha Franklin's comment. There are only three things happening in England: the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, and Terry Reed. She wasn't the only major star to heap praise on him. Everyone from Jimi Hendrix to Eric Clapton seemed to have respect for Reed's vocal prowess. His nickname, Super Lungs, wasn't just about volume, though it's true he could project sound in a way that seemed almost superhuman. It was about a particular texture of voice, soulful yet rocking, tender yet fierce. Reed could handle blues, rock, and even softer, folk-inspired ballads with equal finesse. This versatility set him apart from many of his contemporaries. Bands viewed him like a secret weapon, capable of transforming their sound into something truly unique. On stage, Reed was unpredictable in the best way. One moment, he'd be crooning softly, and the next, he'd unleash a howl that ricocheted off the walls. Audiences were captivated by his stage presence, which combined youthful energy with surprising emotional depth. He wasn't just belting out notes, he was pouring heart and soul into every performance. Record producers saw gold in that voice. Yet Reed's career never quite followed the standard trajectory. He was fiercely independent, often clashing with industry executives who wanted to mold him into a more commercial artist. His artistic instincts sometimes led him away from big opportunities, or, in the case of Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, to politely decline them. So, what path did Terry Reid ultimately choose? And did that path eventually converge with the mainstream success everyone predicted? Post-refusals, carving his own career. After turning down both Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, Reid continued forging his own musical journey. Throughout the 1970s, he released albums that showcased his eclectic style. River, 1973, became a cult classic, a record that blended soulful vocals, acoustic guitars, and atmospheric arrangements. Though not a chart-topping commercial smash, it further cemented Reid's reputation among serious music aficionados. He also collaborated with numerous artists, lending his distinctive voice to various projects and jam sessions. He had ties with Graham Nash, of Crosby, Stills and Nash, performed with David Lindley, and remained on good terms with many big names in rock. Whenever you see older footage or read interviews from that period, you'll notice top-tier musicians referring to him with a kind of reverence. They all knew how incredible Terry Reid's talent was. By the late 1970s and into the 1980s, as rock music evolved into newer forms, punk, new wave, hair metal, Reid's presence became more underground. He continued performing, touring smaller venues, and occasionally resurfaced with new recordings. He never disappeared entirely from the scene, but he didn't achieve the massive, arena-level fame that Led Zeppelin or Deep Purple did. Fans who managed to see him live during those decades often describe it as a magical experience, witnessing a voice that could still outsing many emerging stars, yet remained curiously under the radar. Reid seemed comfortable in his niche, preferring to maintain creative freedom rather than chase the commercial spotlight. Despite staying under the mainstream radar, Reid's story didn't end with a quiet fade-out. Surprising twists, collaborations, and revived interest would keep the legend of Super Lungs very much alive. Controversies, rumors, and the roadblocks. Some onlookers wondered if there were deeper reasons behind Reid's missed opportunities. Could it be management issues, personality conflicts, substance problems perhaps? While he's never been officially implicated in any major controversies like legal accusations or destructive behavior, the 1960s and 1970s were rife with behind-the-scenes turmoil for many artists. Band managers often clashed with strong-willed musicians. Recording contracts could lock artists into stifling deals. Rumors circulated that Reid's reluctance might have stemmed from not wanting to lose creative control or from seeing how grueling life could get for a band constantly on the road. It's also possible he simply valued his independence more than the promises of rock superstardom. Even so, critics speculated, did he sabotage himself by turning down career-defining chances? Or was he preserving something more important, his personal well-being, artistic freedom, or a sense of loyalty to existing commitments? The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Only Reid knows the full story, and he's maintained a sense of mystery by not dwelling on regrets in interviews. So, where does that leave us with the ultimate question? Did Terry Reid accidentally shape the future of rock? The ripple effect, shaping rock through refusal. Let's imagine for a moment that Reid had said yes to Jimmy Page in 1968. The New Yardbirds, as they were still called, might have sounded nothing like the Led Zeppelin we know today. Reed's voice was vastly different from Robert Plant's. While Plant's high-pitched wails became a hallmark of Zeppelin's sound, Reed's soulful tone would have led the band in a different direction. And what about John Bonham? Without Robert Plant's insistence on bringing Bonham along, perhaps Led Zeppelin wouldn't have recruited the thunderous drummer whose style defined their heavier edge. It's not a stretch to say that Terry Reed's refusal paved the way for an unrepeatable synergy. Page's riffs, Jones's arrangement savvy, Plant's searing vocals, and Bonham's drumming force. That combination was so perfect, it shook the rock world to its core. If Reed had taken the job, the puzzle pieces might never have fit together. A similar argument applies to Deep Purple. If Reed had joined, would the band have recorded Child in Time or Smoke on the Water in the same way? Could they have matched Ian Gillan's iconic screams? We'll never know. But it's fascinating to consider an alternate timeline where Terry Reed fronted two legendary bands, possibly merging elements of soul, blues, and rock into something even more experimental. One thing is certain. In turning down these opportunities, Terry Reed contributed, perhaps unintentionally, to the creation of two distinct rock monoliths. Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple, each in their own way, pushed the boundaries of heavy music, influencing countless bands that followed. And woven subtly into that lineage is the name Terry Reed, the missing piece that made it all happen by not being there. Despite these pivotal refusals, Reed remains more than a footnote. His subsequent collaborations musical titans confirm his enduring legacy, late career renaissance, and modern recognition. Over the decades, Reed's music has periodically experienced resurgences of interest. Younger generations of musicians, digging through vinyl collections or streaming services, occasionally stumble upon his work and wonder, how did this guy not become a global superstar? It's almost an inside secret among serious rock and soul enthusiasts that Terry Reed is a treasure waiting to be discovered. He's been invited to perform at festivals, tribute shows, and special events. Each time he steps on stage, the same question arises. Is that voice still there? The answer, by all accounts, is yes. Though naturally matured with age, Reed's vocal ability retains the same distinctive warmth and force that first captivated Jimmy Page all those years ago. Collaborations with contemporary artists have also happened behind the scenes. Whether offering backing vocals, writing input, or guest appearances, Reed has quietly sprinkled his influence across projects that, in turn, introduce him to newer audiences. He might not dominate the headlines, but his reputation in certain circles has grown to almost mythical proportions. With a legacy so intertwined with two legendary bands, it's impossible not to ponder the what-ifs. But Reed's life and music form a narrative that stands on its own. Orphe, the enduring enigma. Artistry over fame. Terry Reed's story is also a meditation on the nature of success and fulfillment in the music industry. Some musicians chase the spotlight, and that's where they thrive. Others find happiness in smaller venues or in the studio, away from the chaos and spectacle of megastardom. For all the talk of missed opportunities, one could argue Terry Reed succeeded on his own terms. He remained true to his commitments, chose projects that aligned with his personal taste, and never seemed desperate for the validation of massive record sales or sold-out stadiums. That's a rare freedom in an industry so often driven by commercial pressures. Yes, there's an undeniable tinge of irony when you think about the sheer scale of Led Zeppelin's success and how close he was to being a central figure. But ironically, that almost status keeps him fascinating. People love an underdog or an overlooked genius. In Terry Reed's case, it's both. The man with the golden voice who said no to absolute rock immortality. Now, let's circle back to the question that started it all. Did Terry Reed make the biggest mistake in rock? Or was he the unheralded architect of Zeppelin's fate, legacy, and the final verdict? If you measure life by stadium tours, platinum records, and magazine covers, then sure, you might say Terry Reed made a colossal mistake. He walked away from not one, but two future rock and roll Hall of Fame groups. Yet, if you look beyond the numbers, you see an artist who helped shape rock history in an unexpected way. By recommending Robert Plant and John Bonham to Jimmy Page, Reed directly influenced Led Zeppelin's formation. By turning down Deep Purple, He made space for Ian Gillan to take the mic, guiding them toward their classic sound. In this sense, his refusals were catalysts for two of the greatest rock lineups of all time. Meanwhile, Reed forged a path that was more personal, intimate, and ultimately true to himself. He became a cult figure, adored by fellow musicians, cherished by hardcore fans, and occasionally discovered by new audiences hungry for that raw, soulful rock vibe they can't quite find anywhere else. So, did he blunder or did he win? Maybe it's both. Or maybe there's no simple answer. The beauty of Terry Reid's story lies in its contradictions. The man who could have been everywhere, yet chose a different road, leaving an immeasurable impact in his absence. The ultimate what if. In the end, Terry Reid remains one of rock's greatest enigmas, a singer so extraordinary that Aretha Franklin once put him on the same pedestal as the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Yet a man who sidestepped some of the biggest opportunities ever dangled in front of an aspiring rocker. His legacy invites us to reflect on the unpredictable nature of success, the importance of loyalty, and how one person's no can trigger a chain reaction felt worldwide. Now, it's your turn to speculate. What if Terry Reid had joined Led Zeppelin? Would they have reached the same stratospheric heights with a different frontman? Would Deep Purple's sound have changed forever with Reid instead of Ian Gillan? And most importantly, can we even imagine a rock landscape without Robert Plant's banshee wails or Ian Gillan's timeless screams? Terry Reid's choices left us with those questions, an intriguing puzzle piece in the grand mosaic of 20th century music. Whether you call him a visionary or a cautionary tale, there's no denying that Terry Reid's voice, his decisions, and his legacy continue to resonate through rock and roll's most epic chapters. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Did Reid make a massive career mistake, or was he the hidden architect behind two of rock's biggest bands? Let's keep this conversation rolling, and remember, sometimes the greatest legends are the ones who stay just out of reach of mainstream fame.